Hello, Unity community, and welcome back to another official Unity live stream here on twitch.tv/Unity and, of course, the official Unity YouTube page. My name is Jackson. I'm one of your community managers. I am responsible for all of the live stream content on these Unity channels, and I'm excited to be here with each and every one of you as today we have something excellent planned. We will be joined by two legends in the Unity community. We've got Soaryn and Lana Lux coming together to talk about game jam experiences and help set you guys up for your next game jam. How are you going to thrive? How are you going to improve? How are you going to simply survive? We'll get to all of that and more in just a moment here. But again, thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're watching live or later as a video on demand. If you are watching later, take a look at that navigation bar at the bottom. It is chaptered out. If you want to skip right ahead to all of the tips and tricks, that is totally an option. Enjoy, navigate, do whatever you need to do here. It's so good to have you. If you are watching live, thank you. And please be aware that this is a conversation. You can hang out and just listen to it as a podcast if you really want to. But if you want to hop in here and engage, ask questions, share comments, share your opinions on things, we are here to pay attention, whether you're watching on the Twitch side, like Georgie, Pandar, Tapir, Minecraft, Shirley, R, or on the YouTube side, like we've got Marsla, President Zaddy, great name, Oil Chic, and we've got Sils as well. Definitely nailed that pronunciation. Again, hop in here. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We have Christian Galindo, Unity developer video games, asking if anyone's from Bogota. I assume that's where they're from as well. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. And hey, maybe let us know what video games you've been playing lately. I'm really excited. We do this every week, once, if not twice. We're working really hard to help create content that you guys will resonate with here on this stream. We always want you to come in and learn something, feel inspired by the people that we speak to, feel like you're able to connect with the community, and of course, be a little bit entertained. That's kind of my responsibility on this one. But we have a survey that we've been putting out since we started 2025 here. I've put a link to it in both chats. If you guys can pop in there, there's 4 questions. It should take you less than 3 minutes. And it's just a little bit about you and a little bit about what type of content you would like to see as we bulk up our schedule and dive into a little bit more there. So please spend some time. I really appreciate it. We're going to take all of that feedback and hopefully create some new and exciting content. We've got some good ideas, some things that we've talked about over the last couple of streams as well that some people seem excited for. So it looks like we've got representation from South Africa, Pakistan. We've also got a Unity solo indie dev based in Dublin from Dies Horribly. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, before we dive into the stream, let's take a look at some housekeeping things. No one freak out, no jump scares. This is a schedule. We are celebrating Global Game Jam 2025. We are partners with Global Game Jam this year. And we have 5 live streams to help celebrate, help prepare you, help you get ready, and help just jam out to the game jam this year. So you will see that we're in the top right there on on January 16th. But of course, on January 21st, 23rd, and 28th, we have more game jam related streams. On the 21st, we're bringing together Team Unity, and we will be talking through and brainstorming and planning their jam. On the 23rd, we'll be doing an active work session where they're going to be trying to get something done in that time. And then on the 28th, we'll come back to reveal the game that they created and try to figure out and just talk about the process, see what worked well and what didn't, those types of things. So please mark your calendars. There's events live already on YouTube. Come back and hang out for any of those streams. We'll be excited to have you as always. And before we dive into today's stream, what should you guys expect? Well, first and foremost, expect excellent guests. We've been hanging out and chatting and getting these streams ready for the last couple of weeks here. And every time I interact with either of these individuals, they absolutely crush it. They bring the knowledge, the charisma, everything that you might need from a stream. It's going to be a very conversational stream. We're going to be chatting very anecdotally, sharing our own experiences. I say our just to include everybody, but I don't have any game jam experiences other than Crazy Web Game Jam last year, where I brought Team Unity back together and was a part of it. So that was fun. But we're also going to be just building up and getting ready for Global Game Jam 2025. I think we're going to start pretty broad, introducing our guest. We're going to speak very generally, and then we're going to get more and more specific. We're going to help show you guys how you can help yourselves, what tips and tricks you might want to utilize, and even some hands-on tools that you can use to really improve your own workflow here. And that's what you guys can expect for today's show. I'm excited to be here again with you all. So thank you very much. Without further ado, I think it's time that we bring on the rest of our guests here. Please welcome to the show, Soaryn and Lana Lux. Welcome on in, you two. How are you?
God.
Doing good.
Doing well. I'll be honest, that was not the first time I've seen that intro from you, Soaryn, and it's a good one. I don't know if it's a trademark. You do it every time you pop on, but it's good. It's really good. It's really, really good. Pandar calling out that, Lana, you already hid the mannequin, which we actually talked about yesterday. It was a major focus in our prep stream, which is great.
I didn't want to distract the entire stream. Everyone's going to be asking about the mannequin. Maybe we'll bring it out later.
Before, to immediately be distracted by the mannequin, does your mannequin have a name? Did you name your mannequin?
Not a collapsible shoulder is its name.
Collapsible shoulder.
What's written on the front of it.
Okay. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
And too, or is it a surname too, or is it just?
It's collapsible last name shoulder. Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah. Great. Steph calling out that the Furby made the cut though, and we already taled about the Super Mario bath bomb. Soaryn just surrounded in green. Obviously a major component to your content creation journey, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a moment as well. But guys, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us on these live streams, to share your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience with the Unity community. I think I've said it every time, but I'm really excited for this. I think it's going to be super, super fun. Before we dive in a little too any deeper here, I feel like, Lana, we've got a channel trailer for you. So if anyone is not familiar with Lana Lux, we're going to show you this trailer. We'll be back in just a moment here, but it'll give you guys a little taste of Lana and what to expect from the content over on their channel. Quick, snappy, to the point, everything you need to know about Lana. Lana, if you were to elevator pitch your own stream community, your own space, your own content, what would people need to know? What should they expect?
They should expect game development. It is almost always game development or me blabbing, sometimes in between, about one thing or another. But we talk about game dev. I've been working on a long-term project for a long time. Every so often, I'll take a little break and do something like a game jam, or I sometimes make 3D assets that I put on the Unity store. I do programming, various sides of 3D art, and Hangouts, pretty much. And that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah, and I've been in and out of there. It's my understanding that before my time, you were also on another Unity stream, and your community as well. Like, of course, you're great at what you do, but the community very, very warm and welcoming, very eager, which is always an exciting thing to see. And you mentioned taking a break to do some game jams. I know you've hosted some of your own. I'm excited. We'll save that. That's it's got its own time. We'll talk about it. But again, Lana, thank you so much for joining us. I want to turn our attention to Soaryn here, sitting, waiting patiently. Seemingly both eager to have the spotlight and to evade the spotlight, but I think it's the two wolves within. Soaryn, how's your day been? What should people know about your streams? What should they expect when they come and hang out?
It's kind of expected, unexpected. We don't know what's going to happen. Usually my phrase is what could go wrong, and half the time, nothing at all goes wrong. Other times, everything goes cataclysmically wrong. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I like it a lot. Now, Soaryn, you've kind of expressed that your own content creation pipeline involves Unity in a pretty unique way. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. So basically, there's a system with Twitch where you can actually listen to events. So something that goes through and says, hey, there's a subscriber, there's a cheer. I've made a system that goes and communicates with that and say, okay, let's do an event with that. But I kind of went a little bit too far with it, I would say, and made it so everything that is on stream is actually in Unity. So my camera, the capture card, everything, we can make it so when someone cheers, we can make the screen explode, shatter the stream, as it were, and do whatever we want. But I've been working on that system for quite some time, where now at this point, people keep calling it a penguin. Don't ask.
How did we get to penguin?
The penguin. Yeah, it's not even. It doesn't even look like a penguin. It's just,
Okay, got it.
We're there.
You understand.
Got it. To help people get to know you guys a little bit better, I want to take a page out of Ted Lasso's book. I want to play first game, best game. Do you remember the first game that you ever fell in love with? And do you have a favorite game of all time?
Ooh.
It's always a tough question. Naturally, as people who play and create games and work on games, you would think it's an easy question to say, hey, what's your favorite game? I do it all the time. It's my mistake that I make where I'm like, oh, super easy question. And every single person's like, that's the hardest question I've ever been asked in my life. So, I won't stop though.
Yeah, usually I don't pick a favorite, but for first, I'm trying to remember if it was like the first one I actually recall actually playing through and understanding what's going on is either Legend of Zelda or like Banjo-Kazooie kind of era games, Nintendo 64 games. I played games before that, but that was like the first one where I could not depend on my brother to read the screen for me.
Cool.
Because 2-year-old reading does not work well for me.
We've got a number of people in the chat participating. Call outs for Project Zomboid, for A Short Hike, Cyberpunk, Mass Effect, some good picks. I think also people trying to guess yours, Soaryn, because people are mad you didn't say Minecraft, which I know you play a lot of.
No one likes Minecraft. We just endure it.
I get that. What about you, Lana? Do you have a first gaming memory and a favorite game that's worth mentioning?
It's hard to think of the first because I feel like there were so many on different platforms that were all like magical at the time. I think the games that I really like got into are very stupidly like educational DOS games because as a kid, my parents were like, video games only if they're educational, and I would play them like over and over until it was like I actually just did well in school. I think because of video games.
Yeah.
Like Math Blaster and like
I remember Math Blaster. I remember. Well, that's, I guess, worth pointing out that Lana and I both grew up in Ontario and Canada, or at least I think you did. I know you're in that general area now. So maybe, I mean, that makes sense that we had similar curriculums and ran through some of the same games, educational games. I learned to type from video games. That was a fun one. Man. Good.
Maybe Beacon teaches typing.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's exactly what it was.
They were good games. They were like really good educational games.
Yeah, we've got other people in the Twitch chat as well calling out that they're familiar with Mavis Beacon. Do you know Dr. Brain? I don't know.
Dr. Brain. So good.
It is something that, and this is just anecdotal, maybe more for the Unity community, but we did a great game design showcase on Halloween. We talked about horror games. And I want to do more of that with different genres, bring in experts that have made really successful games in that, and let's talk about good game design. But it is one that we've put on the board to do a educational game design conversation, because that's a whole different bag. That's really unique and interesting. So maybe we go and find the people that created Math Blaster. That'd be fun.
That'd be hilarious.
Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be so funny.
What I kind of want to hear from you guys as well is, I know that you all have this exceptional experience in Unity, but you also do the live stream and the content creation at the same time. At what point, like, what kind of motivated you to hybridize the two fields in your own experiences? Soaryn, do you want to get started with that one?
So partially for me, it was when I started streaming, I was in my bachelor's, and at the time it was computer science. So I wound up doing my homework on stream. And part of that was coding assignments. And one of them wound up being a AI project, not the buzzword AI, but like trying to make it so place model on location of grid, find way out. And we got extra credit if we could visualize it. So I used Unity, and streaming that wound up being kind of fun. So every once in a while we're like, okay, let's just stream this outside of gameplay. Let's see what we can do. And it's one of those things that if you can make something, you wind up typing and then having some result on stream, just makes it more powerful. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Lana, what about you? What about the beginning of your content creation journey?
I did a lot of different types of game development throughout my life, but when I think at one point I was working on a little project, a game, and I didn't know how to connect with other game developers. I didn't really know anyone in person. I didn't really know where to go in real life to find people. And even online, it felt like it was mostly forums or slow moving kind of day in between kind of messages. So I thought I would try streaming as I'm working, and it was pretty empty. I think there was like 1 or 2 people for a long time. But I was like stoked to have even one person to like, oh my God, you like game development? Like, what do you use? What are you working on? And so it really worked out well because, I was sitting on my computer a lot, and it gave me a chance to chat with people about something I was interested in talking with, and while I could work on my stuff as well. So it just kept going from there pretty much.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing for me, new to the game development side of community management, where as we create live stream opportunities and we come on and we've done live coding and live dev stuff, and I have guests that we bring in, and sometimes they're a little nervous. They're like, "Oh my God, I have to write code in front of an audience. That seems so stressful." And you guys, I've seen you both do it, but the one thing that I've had as a takeaway is that largely the game development community in these spaces is so eager to help and support that you don't get what they feared, that anxiety of like, wow, they're going to put me on blast for making these mistakes. Instead, it seems like it's the inverse, where people are like, hey, have you tried this? Oh, you could do it this way as well. And everyone just tries to build off of each other. So that community feel in the kind of software dev tag and the game development side of things has been really encouraging to see. And that's what I love to see as a community manager as well. Let's talk a little bit more about game jams in general. Let's dive a little bit into our own game jam experiences. I'd love to hear a little bit more about yours. We kind of have a wide variety of experience levels here. Myself, not a game developer, but I have participated in helping wrangle and bring people together to create the Unity game jam opportunities. But I want to hear a little bit more about you guys and let everybody know. Soaryn, you kind of have your own approach, your own experiences. Tell us about them.
I have personally never done a game jam. I've been like kind of a casual watcher at times, but most of the time I wind up having other projects or not enough time to actually engage with them. So it's always interesting what projects come out of them, but I have always wanted to try doing one. Just time is a factor that I don't feel I usually have.
Yeah,
maybe
so
global game jam this year.
This might be the one. This might be the one. So I think it's going to be really enjoyable because Lana will get you to share your experience in a moment here. But Soaryn, as someone who's, we'll say, curious, if you have your own set of questions or you want to ask the chat who have their own experiences, feel free to put those out here. And between what I've prepared and your natural curiosity and what Lana's prepared, I think we're going to have a very, very thorough understanding and like level of preparedness for a lot of people. But Lana, tell us a little bit about your game jam experiences.
Well, the first game jam I went to was actually in person. It was one in Toronto called Toe Jam. TO is short for Toronto, so it works out very as a good pun, kind of a gross pun. But they put on a really good game jam. They were doing it for years. It was over a weekend, and I think there was 700 people in a college building each time. And they provided bagels in the morning, good meals all through the day. It was like a really great, well-organized jam. And I started doing those when I was just getting into game development, at least with the tools that I use now, like a little bit more like 3D, a little bit more complex games than I was doing in the past. And it was really great. I found that everybody was willing to help each other. Everybody was doing cool things. It made for a lot of really great conversation. And I got really enchanted with game jams. So I kept going to those every year. And then I started to do some online ones. There's Ludum Dare. I did Global Game Jam before. And yeah, I've probably done, many dozens of game jams at this point. And, sometimes you finish them. Most of the time the first few times I didn't finish. And I always like to recommend to people, don't expect to even finish your first one. Just go in and do your best. And then you start to get into the idea of okay, this time I'm going to make it smaller. Okay, this time I'm going to make it smaller. And eventually you'll find the sweet spot of what you can accomplish in a set amount of time and how much room to make for other things.
That's honestly a great tip off the hop, because in my head, I feel like it's the gamer instinct of I need to get to that finish line. I need to finish. Right. I need to check the box. I need the achievement. Give me the medal. Give me the trophy. Give me everything. And for you to say, hey, just don't even worry about that this time. Go in as a learning experience, I think is very, very interesting. Tom Millman on the Twitch side saying, don't let scope creep in. And we'll definitely talk about that. I know that it's something we're going to maybe discuss extensively here. But so if we can take a step back, a lot of these game jams have physical locations that you can go and attend. You can bring groups. You can meet up with people there. Do you think that there's a level of importance in being in person, or can you kind of get the same or similar experience remote, working with people that you already know but are not in the same geographical locations?
It's definitely a different experience altogether, I'd say. Like there's something about sitting in a room with 20 other developers who are all like sweating and like working on something, and they're like really into it. Then you go like walk down the hall past all the rooms, and like everyone's in their like shrimp posture over their laptops working on something intensely. And at the end, it's like a party. Everyone's like, here's the games, and you walk around, you get to see what everybody made. So it's definitely a more social event in person. Online, you don't get that, but depending on the jam, you do get the same, like, people are working on their stuff. On the platform, there's usually people posting things. You can see it on social media. And then at the end of the jam, there's usually a place where you can see what everybody made. And that's a great way to like get inspired for the next jam and see, oh, that's a cool genre to do for a jam and all that kind of stuff. It still has that same sense of community. It's just a little bit different.
Awesome.
There is a thing to note, though. Within your own room, you have just what you need to focus on. You can every once in a while look at something like Discord or something, but in a live environment, you have a lot of cases where you're not really aware of what could distract you. Just somebody tapping their finger on something or whatever. If you have kind of the rows upon rows of computers and everyone has their own kind of station, that might be really cool and really nice to work with people. When you start focusing on something, it winds up being like, oh, there's other people here. How do I do this again?
Yeah,
it's true.
Soaryn, as you're curious, we'll I think that describes it well. We'll keep it going. Maybe we can find and recruit you a team during today's stream. Maybe you don't need to go to a physical space. Maybe we can find them and source them.
Maybe. We're gonna go with not. Just mostly because I do have projects I'm working on. Unfortunately, Global Jam is at the same time with the projects. But
all good.
Not
There's
a bad
more
idea.
jams. We might find an opportunity. My hope, my sub goal for today, my side quest is that main quest, everybody here learns something about game jams, feels more prepared for their next one. Side quest, Soaryn feels so inspired and so equipped that they're like, find me the next one. I'm in.
Again.
Soaryn like mission. You're like, what do you think, Soaryn?
So basically, after every tip, I'm just gonna be like, Soaryn, pretty good, right? I want to kind of dive a little more into just who should be doing game jams. Like, who is this the right moment for? Like, is it everybody? Is there like a skill cap? Like, you want to make sure you have a certain level of experience and knowledge. Is there a way you can kind of contribute regardless of your level of experience? Lana, what's your hands-on experience been like?
I want to say it's for everyone. I think that there is like a little bit of a amount of knowledge you want to go in with before you start, but you don't really have to, because you can use that game jam as a weekend of learning. But I definitely think it's worthwhile to like install a game engine ahead of time, get a little bit familiar with it, start to do some basic coding. And once you have a few basic mechanics, if you can make a very, very simple something, then take that into a game jam and try to make a complete package. And then on the other side of things, if you're very experienced, even if you have a big project going on, a lot of these game jams are so short that I know you might be very busy, like doing like the Hollywood Squares.
Oh, great. Okay.
Might be very busy. Sometimes, depending on how things are, it's actually really refreshing to take 2 or 3 days or however long for a jam and work on something else. When I come back to my project after taking a little break for a game jam, I always feel like I have a new perspective. I've learned stuff. I'm like, you know what? I can cut these things out. I can restructure the scope a little bit. It gives me better like project management eyes on things. So I would recommend a game jam for anyone as long as you have just a little bit. And you could even spend like a week or so ahead of time to get familiar with things before you start to try something.
Sure. I want to ask one last question before we dive into like getting ready for a game jam, actually physically prepping. What are we going to be doing? But before, let's wax poetic for a moment here. Why are game jams important?
Game jams are a really good learning tool. So one of the hardest things as a game developer, you guys, Soaryn, you can probably comment on this, is finding like a good scope for your project and finding how to break it in or like turn it into something doable if you have an idea for something. And like if you are working on a long-term project, or even if you keep starting new projects, you keep getting good at skills that are used when you're starting a project. But there's so many skills that you need to work on to complete a project that if you haven't done that yet, if you've spent a year or something in a game, you're facing a whole new territory, and that's going to be like really challenging. So it's good to try to finish and publish small games. You can even use like a pseudonym if you want to only put out the big one under your main name or whatever. And then that way you practice like how much, because that last day you will start to see, oh, I want to do these things, but I have a time limit. So I need to practice wrapping it up, publishing, marketing, doing images, building a game, testing a game, title screens and pause screens, things like that. So I highly recommend. It's like a really good scope management and just game development practice opportunity, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It winds up being one of those things that's kind of extends to everything. So in order to learn, you kind of need to give yourself little tasks to do. And one of the things, like for a bachelor, is usually you have a teacher give you an assignment, you go do that assignment. You typically learn from doing that assignment. But when somebody comes in like stream and asks like, hey, how would you recommend to learn Java for something? It's like, do you have something in mind you want to do? And they like list out, I want to make a game. It's like, okay, let's take that down a peg. Try to make it just print something to the console. Just do tiny tasks, build that up. And like Lana said, you want to just take practice, do more practice beforehand, and just apply everything you know to it. You don't have to be successful with it. You just have to apply it. And if you fail or succeed, you can learn from that experience and just build on it.
Absolutely. I love it. And chat, I'm seeing you guys asking questions for our guests, which is fantastic. If you guys have questions, please let us know. I've already earmarked a couple of them to get there as we kind of see the natural flow of the show. But I also see you interacting with each other, sharing your own experiences, encouraging each other, sharing resources, that sort of thing. And that's what I love about being a part of the Unity community and seeing you guys all try to eagerly help each other. So keep that chat lively. What I'd actually love to hear from you all is, how many game jams have you done personally? And I know from experience and talking to other people, sometimes that needs to be a guesstimate or a range, because sometimes it's a lot. But from there, we'll slowly shift over here into prepping for your game jam. If this is my first one, what do I want to do to prep it and make sure that I'm showing up equipped and ready to go?
Soaryn, what would you recommend?
Ooh, just what tools or what?
What would you do to start a game jam if you were hypothetically going to do one for Global Game Jam this year?
Hypothetically. Realistically, try to figure out what I want to make. Like, one of the problems I have is I want to make a lot of games. Which one? So then trying to isolate that down and then getting kind of a kind of task list from that and allocate which tools I need to complete those tasks, but kind of get that kind of storyboard or such in place first. But
yeah, I think that actually naturally flows into a question that Quickstar's brought up. Do you go into it with nothing built, for example, input controller systems or event bus or anything like that, or do you build everything from scratch during the jam? So what is the appropriate amount? Like, and do the rules necessarily govern that? Is there a certain level of prep that is traditionally accepted?
I think it depends on the game jam. Some game jams and the community around the game jam, some of them, so like Ludum Dare is like it has two different ways you can enter. One of them is competitive. And I think people get a little bit more intense with something like that than they would with other ones. With something like that, it's important to people that you really stick to the theme, kind of to prove that you didn't start ahead of time, because a lot of people are going in and they're really trying to be putting putting in a good effort and getting a rating after, that's comparative to other people. So when someone feels like they're like doing it ahead of time, they get upset. But I think most jams are not quite as strict as that, and people don't care so much if you have a plan ahead or not. But as long as you stick to the theme, people are usually happy. And also to prepare for one, this is one I feel like that people forget to talk about or like forget about. If it's a weekend jam, if it's an intense one, especially, getting groceries ahead of time, meal prepping, having like your laundry clean, having all of your plans, like nothing's coming up if you can manage, or like if you're doing something, having it like all set up and ready to go, so that you don't have to think about anything other than your game during the time of the jam. You can really like zone in and get into things.
Yeah, I think snacks has been a consistent one. But Soaryn, we talked about how we manage our own diets ahead of time. So it sounds like you've got it all locked down. You can get stuff. People bring stuff to you. It's easy.
Yeah, at times. Yeah. I live with my parents.
That wasn't a detail that I was aware of, but now we're here. We got it.
Well, you can prep your parents, get them like, Mom, Dad, we got to have meals. It's an important schedule.
Every once in a while, when they go out, they come back home. They just bring me McDonald's.
That's nice.
That's true love, in my opinion. That's true love right there. We do have another question here from Mossy that says, "How do I find people to form a team? How do you formulate a team? How do you make those connections? And can you run in a game jam solo? Do people do that?"
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've done most of mine solo.
Okay.
Once again, it depends on the jam, but if you're allowed to use third-party assets, you don't really need to be an artist or a musician. You can just be the programmer and put things together. You can always take that jam game and then build it out later with the assets you want, or work with someone. But solo game jamming is totally an option.
I think another really important question with these types of things, where you're sitting down, you have a time constraint, you're ambitious, you're eager, you're excited to get started. How do you make sure that you are managing scope and scale of your project? And how do you know when it's actually finished?
Okay, so this is one of my tips I've got for you guys. After doing enough jams, one thing I like to do is roughly a day before the last day, or sooner if possible, I try to get the game into like a playable state if I can. But even if I can't get to that point, I try to upload something. And you don't always have to make it public depending on the platform, but just knowing that your game builds, that it can upload, that you understand the upload process, because those last half a day of a jam, you are really making tough calls of like what you are going to have time for and what you're going to have to just not include. And the last thing you want to be doing is not including anything and focusing on uploading, because you have to really make sure, and you don't want to like have a failed build or some bugs and miss the cutoff. So that's like always feels really disappointing when that happens. And it happens to people all the time. To avoid this, highly recommend uploading something like a day before. And then you don't have to worry about it. You're like, I'll just repeat those steps at the last few hours or whatever.
I think sound advice. Now, Soaryn, you had something that you wanted to share on this. Does a game need to be finished to be an enjoyable experience?
What is finished? Realistically, no matter what you do, my favorite phrase is that if you try to make something idiot-proof, someone will prove to be a better idiot. And unfortunately, your game will probably not be bug-free, and it's just the nature of it. But that's okay. It can be very entertaining. It can be fun, because your player is going to have a moment where they just do what you intended for them to do. The game does not care, and it just puts you into space, puts you into orbit, because you got in the car. We don't know why. This is a very early access, arguably, of Astroneer, but the idea was that physics was a little awry at the time. So I got in and I wound up in orbit. So having this kind of flow of, I want to make my game perfect, is admirable. Try to have that mentality, but make sure you have something in the background, just keeping that in check. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. If it works, and if you have a deadline like a game jam, feel free to not worry about it being one-to-one exact vision. Just try to make it fun for you, really.
Yeah, I think games are a business, but games are fun. It's play. It's
Yeah.
enjoyment. So go and find that. It's an interesting conversation for another time, but the balance of business and art in games is always an interesting thing that I think everyone has slightly differing experiences and opinions on. So maybe that'll be a whole other stream where does business meet art in video games. But for now, I want to dive deep into the tips and tricks. We have prepared a slideshow of Lana's very excellent tips and tricks to ensure a successful game jam. I wrote the title. If any of the writing on it's weird, it's not a Lana thing. That's a me thing. Don't worry about it. That's my bad, everybody. I have a penchant for creating very minimalistic, very simple, and very silly slideshows. So, Lana, we're basically going to hand you the keys to the castle on this. And we'll go through, there's, I believe, 7 different tips that you want to share with people. So let's dive in with number 1 here.
Okay, so number 1, plan before you start. So Jackson asked earlier, should you plan ahead of time? That's up to you. If you are going to plan ahead of time, I'd recommend going in with like maybe an idea of what genre you'd like to work on, maybe an idea of what art style, these kinds of things. But your main planning is probably going to be happening at the beginning of the jam, the first hour, 2 hours, 3 hours if needed. Some people spend a whole day planning because the better you plan, the smoother the rest of it goes. Highly recommend coming up with exactly what you're going to make and how you're going to approach it, coming up with like the simplest version of the game, and then things you'll add in once that simple version is hopefully done ahead of time. Hopefully you'll have extra time to add in all the other things you want to do. So number 1 is planning.
Number 1 is planning, which again, like I think is the natural inclination, and seeing some of the chat go by and some of the questions that's being asked is like, how much do I plan? So at least it's in their mind. I don't know what type of person would just show up and be like, I got this. But there is a level of preparation. Maybe honestly, I say that because that might be me. No dev experience, and I might just be like, guys, I'm here. How can I help? Let me know.
I actually have done that. Okay, so
okay, there you go.
I've gone into jams. I'm like, I'm gonna roughly make this, and I'm like, okay, I've thought about it too long. I'm gonna start, and then I'm like, partway through, I'm like, I got to go backtrack. I got to reduce. I got to change my direction altogether. So I have actually just jumped in and like see where the water takes me. I don't know, but it's definitely good to plan.
That probably depends on the jam itself, right? You said like Ludum Dare was more strict, whereas Game Jam feels a little more open. If you have one that's a long time frame, you probably can say, okay, I'm going to spend the first stage just figuring what I want to do. That's the goal of that, and just kind of wing it as you go. But
do you feel that at some point a level of experience and knowledge can compensate for a lower amount of planning, or is that a fool's errand in being like, oh, I'm really good at this, I don't need to plan? Is that a flawed approach and mentality?
I would say yes, but I would also say, depending on the plan, some plans might require more like thought, and some ideas might require less thought. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to make a like a certain arcade genre, and these are going to be the enemies, this is going to be the thing, this is going to be the thing. Like it's very straightforward. You don't have to sit there for hours. But if you want to make like a story, and there's like, you want to have an emotional reaction from the audience, that's going to take a little bit more thought. And you don't want to skip on it and then have to try to figure things out later, because it could end up in rework, and that's just, you don't have time for it in a jam.
Yep. I do want to take a slight detour because Wonderman1 is saying, I'm guessing game jams are a good way to build a portfolio. Has anyone here gotten a position using a game jam? And I can say that we've done a creator spotlight with a dev in the last few months on a game called Void Crew, which is a very, very fun game. The studio is called Hootly Hoot Games. And they told us that explicitly they're based in Europe, and they recruited from game jams. They would show up at game jams, interact with the people there, and that's how they hired one of the guests that we spoke to. So it is a very important, or it can be, I suppose, a very powerful networking opportunity. So just wanted to touch on that from my own personal experience as well. All right, let's dive into number 2 here. Keep it simple. I feel like this is a good one and applies to my own workflow as well, not even in game jams. Keep it simple. Let's dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, that one, I think all game devs have said this to people starting off. Everyone starting off has heard it from everyone who's been doing it. It is something that I think everyone always is constantly trying to strive for. Keeping things simple, keeping things low scope. Honestly, if you come up with an idea for a jam, especially if it's a short jam, make that idea as simple as possible, and then look at it, and then make it simpler than that. Because what was the line that you heard, Jackson?
Which one?
It was like, come up with the idea, cut it in half, and
Yeah.
cut it in half again.
Yeah,
Something
from
like
Team Unity, Joy had said on scope and scale, take whatever grand idea you have, that's great, but cut it in half, then cut it in half again. That's what you're going to try to accomplish for the game jam. And I thought that was pretty poetic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the thing about game jams is few people have time to polish the game. So if you can actually make something like simpler than you thought would be cool, but then you have time to put like cool sound effects or cool particle effects or like voice acting or something, like those little details that go a long way, that will actually make it shine more than just getting like a slightly more complex mechanics in, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kirk, another community representative, says to add to this tip, come up with a tight and core game loop. So basically being able to be like, hey, this diamond is polished, it shines in the middle of things, as opposed to like you've done too much, you've spread yourself too thin. I think I like this. Everyone says keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method, and there's a reason that people say that, because it seems important. But let's dive into number 3 here. Design for your strengths. I know that we had Phil, who also helps with the Unity Insiders, who was in chat a moment ago, who said something to the effect of, I remember my first global game jam, there was one audio guy who worked on about 5 projects during the jam. Design to your strengths, go in with what you are best at, and find your opportunities. Does that kind of ring true, Lana?
Yeah. Game jams are good for experimenting, but I would only really experiment with like one thing at a time. So if you know you're really like, I'm comfortable doing survival games. I love survival games. I could come up with a really simple survival loop. That would be better for me than trying to do like a tower defense, which is it'd be fun to do, but it's a new territory. So every system that I make within that is going to be something new. Whereas I've done every system for a survival game multiple times at this point. So I know I can do more with that. Same with your art style. I wouldn't recommend going in and trying a new art style, a new genre, a new setting, a new everything. Like, try to stick to stuff that you feel confident in, and then maybe if you know it's going to be an experimental jam, try like one thing at a time. That'd be my recommendation on that.
Yeah, take it slow. I like that as well. Soaryn, what would you say would be your number 1 strength? Where would you see yourself slotting into a team for a jam? Not to say that you're doing it this month, but where would you say your strength?
Realistically, I've liked to do it like working inside Unity's kind of dots, their data-oriented tech stack, and their ECS. It's because it winds up being data-oriented versus object-oriented. And we've been so accustomed to object-oriented programming that it's kind of a mental switch, and you get quite a bit of performance. So I tend to try to work on high-performance algorithms to make something run faster. Make it so it's like, hey, this thing runs at 10 milliseconds. Cool. I'm going to make it run at 0.1.
Whoa.
Go kind of systems. So probably back end, despite liking rendering.
Okay. Love it. Let's dive into tip number 4 right here. I missed the button. Focus on functionality. Okay. Lana, disperse your wisdom.
So kind of like what I was saying earlier, disperse it. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, try to get something playable as soon as possible. If you can, when you're planning, try to come up with like, if you guys are devs in apps or websites and stuff, you probably have heard the term MVP, minimum viable product, which is like if you strip out all of the nice to haves and it's just the core mechanics or the core gameplay, try to come up with that when you're planning, and then try to get to that as soon as you can when you're working. Then you're like, okay, I can submit something. Now everything else is extra. And when you're playing it, you can start to see things like, oh, I really wish I had that mechanic. So I'm actually going to prioritize that one instead of the other one that might be less, feel like it's needed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'd focus on that, getting something playable first.
Yeah. Sorry, just saying hey to everybody in chat. If you guys are just tuning in here, we are, of course, are joined by Soaryn, and below Soaryn, we've got Lana Lux here. We're talking about Global Game Jam coming up. We're talking about tips and tricks to thrive in your next game jam. We are on 4. Let's dive into 5 here. Going without expectations. I like this one. I think managing expectations, a key thing that I've needed to learn in my life, but I want to know how it applies even more so to Global Game Jam or game jams in general.
Yeah. So with game jams, as I said, you might not finish it your first time, maybe not even your second time, maybe not the third, fourth, or any random time you might not finish the jam. And that's okay. That is not a lot of people are like, oh, I failed, I didn't do it. It's not. You always come away with a win if you attempt to make a game during a jam, because you learn so much, even through not submitting on time, not getting to even a playable game in time. That's okay. You learn something from that, and you're going to take that away in the next game you make, whether it's in a jam or not. You're going to be more you're going to have a better understanding of what you're capable of and in what amount of time. So that's a huge learning. And that's not to mention all of the technical learnings that you're going to be doing by trying to make a game in such a short amount of time. So just attempting to make a game, just going in, just dedicating a few days of your free time to learning a skill that you're excited about, to me, that's like a hugely successful thing, regardless of the results of the jam. And like, there's games that have come out of the game jam. People add to it a bit. It's like they've won like awards. They've become these amazing games. I know it's easy to look at those and be like, maybe this will win awards, and that's like great to imagine. But try to keep it like, anything beyond just participating is just bonus and extra. And I can strive for it, but like, don't feel like good or bad about what's going to happen. Just assume it'll be just a weekend spent learning.
I like that a lot. I know that someone, I saw it go by in the chat earlier, they were mentioning essentially like no game jam is a failure, in a sense that like, hey, you didn't get your game done, or it didn't hit the full scope that you were hoping for, but you learned things, you connected with people, you grew in a lot of ways. So I think managing your expectations and setting your goals within them would be a very important step to kind of go into your next game jam. Let's dive into 6 here. Stick to the theme. That's right. Game jams will guide you along with the theme. It's important.
Yeah. I mean, again, it depends on the jam itself, but I think Global Game Jam, for example, is the theme is an important part of it. This, again, is what this is like. It's hard to run a jam. There's no real way to tell if somebody worked on something ahead of time. The theme is like the one tell that like if the theme is, I don't know, magnets, and you didn't include magnets in your game anywhere, then it's like, did you even participate during the jam time? Like, you could have just submitted an old game or something. So showing that you actually acknowledge the theme and implement it into your design in your game is kind of like a piece of proof that you worked on this game during the jam. It's mostly like an honor code, so that's a way to like prove it. And the people who are participating really appreciate and like respect that you do it. And on top of that, it's a good way to kind of work with your creativity and try something that might feel a little bit scary, or like you have to really be creative to come up with some idea that you're into with that theme. But that's why there's some time at the beginning that I recommend to think about the funnest thing that you can make on that theme, and you'll practice coming up with good ideas and good game loops and good game design by doing many of these.
I do want to bring in a comment here on the Twitch side from Tapir, who says, we had a cozy jam and Lana made a zombie shooter. Ask her about it. And if it was anything other than zombies, I'd probably be like, it's fine. But I'd love to hear about this. How did it? Tell me how.
It was a cozy zombie shooter.
Cozy zombie shooter. I dig it.
You had some cozy music while you're shooting zombies. You had a cozy home to go back to. So I'd say it was very on theme.
I feel like there's a note though. It's like, if there is a theme, as long as the game jam itself isn't really strict on it, if you made your best effort to make something and realized that there was a theme, or it just escaped your mind that there was a theme, and you made this entire thing, you don't necessarily have to go back and try to insert it. You probably could just put something along the lines of, hey, I forgot. This is mostly for me. As long as you learned, I would say it's probably more valuable than sticking or having to be rooted into the theme.
Or you can take the PR and marketing approach that I would and just find a way to use your words to be like, no, it's connected by, and then you're speaking for 3 minutes and you're like, naturally.
There's like some weird lore that's like related.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
You do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a theme could be valuable in a lot of the creatives that I've spoken to. When you're kind of given no boundaries, you're given no guardrails, it's kind of hard to figure out where you want to go. I feel like, is a theme particularly helpful in bringing you in and narrowing your approach?
I think it's a good skill to practice. It's kind of like if you're a painter and you look at a blank canvas, you're like, I don't know what to paint. But as soon as there's like something on the canvas, or like if the canvas is sometimes it's smaller, or if there's like something about it it kind of gives you new ideas. And I think that's a good skill to practice when you're a game dev, because practicing working within constraints is a great way to like practice game design. And when you try to look at what you're good at, like some of the constraints that come up in game dev you wouldn't think about. For me, my main project, I'm making somewhat realistic characters, and I don't want to go through the process of lip syncing because it's very difficult to get it right. And I know that would take up so much time for all the dialogue I have in the game. So conveniently, in the world, everybody wears masks. So these kinds of like limitations that come up in game dev will probably come up with your bigger projects, and practicing it with little game jams is a great way to use your creativity and find ways to design a game around a certain thing or another.
I like it a lot. And we've continuing to see some questions, some comments, seeing you guys support each other, which I think is fantastic. Keep it going on the live stream side here in the chat. Of course, we're joined by Soaryn and Lana. Go and check out their channels. I know that occasionally we're putting the links in there. You will not be disappointed with the fantastic content that you see over there. But I believe this is our last tip coming up here. What I'd love to see from you guys in the chat, what is your number one tip? These were not in any particular order. These were just as we wanted to discuss them. But if you had one tip to give to people, I'd love to see it in chat as we dive into our 7th here. Lana, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but can you speak a little more to its importance?
Yes, the build and upload a day in advance. I know it's hard to do when you've got a lot going on, but if you go into the jam with this as your plan and your goal, it really helps a lot. I have been in this position so many times with game jams where I am the last few hours, I am panicking. I've definitely worked really hard on game jams over a weekend, and in the last, half hour or so, I go to build it, and it just takes more than an hour. And now I don't have time to build, zip, and upload in time to submit it for the jam. So if you've spent your whole weekend, like, yes, I got a game done during it, so it was all like, again, it's successful. But there's something really rewarding about actually submitting a game. So you don't want to end up missing that opportunity when you have a game ready just because the timing of things wasn't quite right. I highly recommend building and uploading in advance, especially if it doesn't get published, because then you can just upload multiple times throughout the jam just to like make sure things are all still working good, or like improve it bit by bit.
I think we've already seen some great ones filtering in through the chat. I'd like to share them. Weekend saying, get an IV of tea. You're going to need it. I think caffeine might go in line with the snacks and the food, the groceries. Get your caffeine, manage it responsibly. Caffeine's a really powerful drug. No one's talking about it. We've got Gervais saying, just have fun doing it. Soaryn, you, of course, said, have fun learning. Just do it from Steph's studio. I feel like maybe getting started might be the most difficult thing for me as someone with a lot of anxiety. Like showing up would be the biggest challenge, but I feel like just getting your foot in the door and showing up will be the biggest hurdle that you need to get over here. Wonderman saying the same thing, just do it. And then, of course, we've got some funny responses that we won't share because they're not as helpful, but they made me chuckle. So I really appreciate that. Of course, that's the end of our tips and tricks section here. Lana, thank you for preparing it and allowing me to make a silly slideshow. And that was enjoyable. Gang, I'm going to put our survey in the chat one more time here before we move on. Of course, we are live here on Unity's Twitch and YouTube channels every Thursday and occasionally other days of the week as well. We are trying to increase our presence here. We are trying to create more fun and exciting content. And to do that, we want to help build this community space with you. So we've put out this survey. Go in there, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what type of content you would be interested in seeing more of. It's 4 questions. It'll take you almost no time at all. The information is very valuable here because we want to create a space that you guys are eager to return to every single week. And with that, we can dive into just a little bit more specific, a little bit more technical. Are there must-have tools for game jams? Are there add-ons? Are there packages? Are there things like that that you want to make sure to have installed that's going to give you a leg up in the time constraints? Anything that comes to mind?
This is the tool that some people use called Unity. That
seems important.
Yeah, seems like it could help, but that's up to you, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like how you go about your game dev. Soaryn, you probably, if you start a new project, I bet you have like assets that you import pretty early on that like every time you're like, I'm gonna need this, I'm gonna need that.
Typically, there's often projects where I just open up though and just have scratch. So I have that reference material is open, but I will recreate it because I know more than I did when I wrote it. So
Okay, that makes sense
there's
as
nothing
well.
wrong with rewriting.
Yeah. Like do tween is one that I really like, for example. That one's handy. Depends like if you can use third-party assets. That one's more just like it's like a tween, helps you tween things, which again, when you're doing a game jam and you want to put in quick effects of like fading one thing or moving or rotating, that's a real quick way to put it in throughout your jam. It really depends on the rules of the jam, but yeah, it comes down to like whatever tools you're used to working with are probably going to be handy in your project when you start a new one.
I know that we have a couple of people hopping in and supporting and providing their own tools. We see ChatGPT in here a handful of times. I don't know, quite honestly, some people use it as a joke, but it can be a pretty powerful tool, maybe not in necessarily game design. Where I have found use for it is in like the brainstorming and like ideation phases where you're like, hey, I've got this, it's kind of formulated. Would you guys rely on these things? Do you have your own process that would kind of sidestep them entirely?
So you have to be kind of careful with these language models right now because they if you're using to brainstorm ideas, it could generate ideas that are being pulled from something else. So as long as it's a vast multitude of things, it might be fine. But if it's generating something like code for you, it is a confident liar. It doesn't know it's wrong because it pulled this data. So you're just probably spending more time going through and sifting through and actually having to almost replace some of it. It's probably not worth it for doing a game jam unless you're using the game jam to test this kind of thing. But if you're wanting to use it and it's like, hey, this is going to be a fancy tool, I would stay away from it right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. It does come with its own, let's call them yellow flags. Their own things that you need to be definitely cautious about. Use it smartly and question everything that comes out of it. But you're right. Like if you're going to use it to pull code and then you're going through to strip out and fix every line of code, did you really save yourself any time? Yeah.
But it could do something like using an AI tool to kind of help you. I have my image. Please upscale this. That's actually usable because that winds up being something that it's just polishing up what you had made. Perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. I think we're in a really and we've talked about AI delicately on live streams because it's such a hot button topic. But the first time that we discussed it from when I took over doing the live streams, we have an internal at Unity advocate for responsible AI. Manu is fantastic. He's done speeches at Mozilla. He's won awards. He's got a TED Talk. He's got a masterclass on how to make sure you're using this responsibly. And he is an artist as well. So at his core, he's very, very invested in it. So it's really interesting. Again, not to perpetuate or follow up on it, but just to kind of provide the disclaimer that it is a hot button issue that people have a lot of strong feelings about, and in a lot of cases, rightfully so. So just be cautious out there, I think maybe is the takeaway from this, both with what they produce and the reaction you might receive from other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Lana, anything else as a must-have tool to make sure that you bring equipped?
I mean, it's good to have your programs all like ready to go. It's good to have some space on your computer. Last thing you want to be doing is like organizing files if you have 1,000 Unity projects and your hard drives are all full. Put them somewhere else for the game jam. Otherwise, I can't think of anything offhand that I use every time.
That's great. The asset store may or may not have something to help everybody, but we'll have more details about that on the next stream. But I think that might be a useful tool. We just aren't able to speak. I probably already said too much, but hey, that's what you get. You come to the Unity live streams and you get a little sneak peek. But any closing thoughts as we kind of wind down the stream here? We've talked a lot about starting your first, what to expect, how to maximize your time, what snacks you definitely need. Is there any kind of closing thoughts that you guys have on everything here? And Soaryn, did we convince you? Will we see a game jam in your future? Not in your immediate future, but in your future.
There's a possibility. I would just want to reiterate, just have fun and just enjoy learning. Those are two main things of what you're actually trying to accomplish here. So just have fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. You will probably, if you are getting into it, you will probably get like into the stress, like in the zone. It'll probably be intense, but at the end of the day, it's not too serious. It is a learning opportunity, and just enjoy it for what it is and what you're doing, because making games is fun.
It should be. It should be, right? Again, we're going to throw links in the chat here to both Lana and Soaryn's channels. Please go and check out both of them. Both have constant content coming out. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit about your schedule before we say goodbye? Soaryn, how often are you live? When can people find you?
Usually we stream Thursdays to Sundays. We try for 2 p.m. Eastern. However, my sleep schedule is that of not good. So usually if it's later, it's not unexpected. But Thursdays and Sundays. Probably not today, though, given that we streamed today with you.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I apologize if we disrupted your schedule too much.
No. This is good.
Lana, what about you? How often are you live? What's your schedule like?
I'm on almost every day, Monday to Fridays, weekends as well, often, late mornings, Eastern time, early afternoon, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. Yeah, pretty much every day I'm on working on my game.
Working on Strain.
Exciting.
Very, very exciting. All right, gang, I'm going to say a massive thank you to both of our guests, Soaryn and Lana Lux. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom, sharing your time, sharing your personality, your energy. It was infectious. I'm very, very grateful to have had you guys here. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to do a quick sign off with everyone, and then you and we're going to chat again in a moment. But everybody in chat, please say a massive thank you to our guests here. Yay.
Thank you, honestly.
Of course, I appreciate that. We'll find more opportunities. Of course, we'll find more opportunities. This was so fun. We'll bring you guys back for something. Maybe Soaryn joins Team Unity for the next game jam.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe. Honestly, that could be super fun. Anyhow, we don't need to have the team meeting right now. We'll talk about it again. Thank you guys again, and let me say goodbye to our friends here. All right, everybody. We are winding down this stream here, so we're going to wrap up. A reminder that if you are looking to connect with other game devs, you can go to the Discord or discussions pages at Unity. We've put those links in the chat. They're a great space to connect, to ask questions, to find support, maybe to find your next team for a game jam as well. One final time, we're putting the survey in the chat. Please go and give me your opinions of what type of content you would like to see. We are live every Thursday here at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I believe that's 5 p.m. GMT. Come back anytime. You will always be welcome here, and we are always hoping that you will learn something and or feel inspired by something, all while connecting with your fellow game development community. We have our next stream planned for next Tuesday. That's January 21st. We will be bringing Team Unity together to jam, and we will, of course, follow that up on Thursday with some more sessions, working on whatever game they put together before we reveal the game on the 28th. Thank you again so very much for coming to hang out. I hope that you guys elect to join us for a future live stream. We're going to continue to kick butt and create really fun and exciting content for you all. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. Come and see us again soon. Until I see you all again, hey, my name's Jackson. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.